Well, hello, and welcome to Stop Let's Team Up. It's me, Ross, here, and I have a guest, Ron from Fantastic Comic Fan is back with me. Say hi, Ron.
Hello, everybody. Good to be back again.
And we're going to talk about Len Wein. This is going to be the first creator I've talked about since like my second episode when we talked to me and Jennifer DeRoss talked Gardner Fox. We're going to talk Len Wein. One of my listeners, Kirby, he recommended this, and I went, you know what? Len is an unsung hero of comic history. I don't think he always gets the credit he's due, and we're gonna talk a little bit about him. I'm gonna give some basic biographical crap, and then we're gonna talk about some things about Len that we want to talk about. So hold on. Len Wein was born in 1948. He worked for about everybody. Was Marvel editor-in-chief. He created Swamp Thing, Wolverine, the new X-Men, basically. He's known for the Human Target, and he did a great run on Justice League, but he also wrote about everything else, and was a very influential editor. He was one of those Marvel editors in the 70s and 80s that actually you saw his thumb on stuff, and in a good way, which is good. My first encounter with Len Wein was his Justice League run, which is 100 through 114. He starts with a 3-part Justice Society story, reintroducing the 7 Soldiers of Victory. And I think Not 100 is one of the first comic books that was ever put in my hands by my big brother. I read this while we were moving across New York City. We were moving from California to Pennsylvania via New York City to see my grandfather. And I remember sitting in the backyard of my grandfather's house in Long Island. It may have been my aunt's house, and reading this right next to the little kiddie pool they kept throwing us in because it was ungodly hot in 19. Whenever this guy, I think it came out in 72.
Yes.
Yep. That was summer 72. We drove across country in a Ford station wagon during a heat wave. And this was the first con. And his run is amazing. It's just amazing. But let's get to other things. Ron, you gave us some notes. Why don't you go through the stuff you sent me?
First, his first run of comic book, his first book was in Teen Titans number 18. His first Marvel was in Daredevil 71, 1970. And you were talking about all the stuff he co-created. He also co-created Lucius Fox, who still goes into the Batman mythos, especially now.
Yes, one of his children is a Batman, isn't he?
Yes, exactly. And his last published script was a Swamp Thing winter special in 2018, just after he had died.
Yeah.
It was going to be part of a new Swamp Thing miniseries. It didn't happen, so he took the last script, and it had art with Kelly Jones. But you're talking about his editorial work. He did Watchmen. He was the editor on Watchmen. Outsiders, Batman the Outsiders, All Side Squadron, New Teen Titans. You were talking about Wolverine. When my approach when I was looking at this, I was looking at after he died, some of the cool stuff that people were talking about. And Len was the guest of honor for Hugh Jackman at the X-Men films.
Oh, yeah.
And he got up and thanked Len for creating Wolverine and giving him the opportunity to play Wolverine, and personally thanked Len Wein in front of a big premiere of everything. But that was actually kind of
it's
cool
not
run.
something, and that the star of a movie doesn't normally do something that
And at the time,
and definitely DC wouldn't be doing it. Mostly the time the publishers just put their names near the end of the credit and give them a $25,000 thank you check.
He was also editor-in-chief for a while at Marvel.
He was a good editor-in-chief.
Yes.
He was a really strong one. They jumped in between Roy and Jim Shooter. There was the editor-in-chief of the quarter. Someone would have the job for about 4 or 5 months.
Marv Wolfman, Jerry Conway had it. Len Wein had it at the time of the new X-Men came out. He was the editor-in-chief at the time.
That's why I only wrote the first 2, right?
Yes. And Claremont actually was like hanging out in the wings. I believe he was one of their, I think he was Len Wein's assistant.
Yeah, he was Len
at the
Wein's
time.
associate editor.
And he came up and said, hey, can I do the X-Men? And Len Wein's like, yeah, go ahead and do it. And that's how Claremont got to start with the X-Men. You know, you were talking about some of his runs, and I did some research, and I did not realize he had wrote a really cool run of Green Lantern.
Oh my God, it's one of the best. And it's the only one that I read religiously.
You were talking about, because on my podcast, as you know this, I also like will tell creators that really deserve a whole lot more attention in the spotlight. And back then, it seems like now a lot of creators are almost like rock stars. There's so much over the internet and on news feeds and Instagram. But back then, we didn't have a big fan press, to top creators. So somebody like Len Wein, his Green Lantern run didn't get the kudos in the spotlight like it should. It is one of the best Green Lantern runs. He was.
I was working a comic shop when that came out, and when it switched from Hal to John.
That was
when
the
John
first
was
time.
the main. Yeah, the first time it had not been Hal. That book was one of the most popular books in the shop.
Yep.
When it was Dave Gibbons, we were just getting to know him. I knew him because he had drawn the first several years of the Doctor Who comics in the Doctor Who Weekly. And I was getting those imported.
I remember that cover. It was Hal surrounded by the Guardians. He's on Oa, and he takes the ring, tosses it on the ground, and says, I'm tired of being your whipping boy. I quit. And the title of that issue was Take This Job and Shove It. That was the title of the issue. And even though Len Wein left shortly after this, Hal did not rejoin the Green Lantern Corps till 199, right before Crisis. You're right, John Stewart took over, and he became the new Green Lantern, which I think is actually the first time that Hal Joyner was replaced for more than an issue or two.
Oh yeah, because John was
a standby at the time.
Yeah, he was a standby. Him and Guy were.
Yep.
But Len also for Post Crisis, he wrote the Blue Beetle.
I remember that. Yes,
it was a really good run. That was an incredibly good one. I'd never read a Blue Beetle comic because he hadn't been published in decades.
No. And again, he was well liked in the industry. Also, people liked Len Wein.
I read a little clip of where Alan Moore was talking about how Len was told to recruit his replacement.
Yes, you're right.
On Swamp Thing, and he went over to England and he interviewed this guy. He was really weird, and he wore a ruffled shirt and a suit that was like decades out of date, and was just being Weird Alan Moore, and they formed a fast friendship, and you can tell. I mean, Moore trusted him.
Yeah, well, because Moore also, he was the editor for Moore's run on Watchmen.
Yeah, and he was the editor on that Swamp Thing too, wasn't he?
I think he was. Yeah.
Yes. I think Karen Berger maybe did some of it, because that's Swamp Thing's and Karen Berger is what created Vertigo.
Yes. He let's see. He was kind of remember the old Comic Buyers Guide?
Yeah.
He was
that religiously.
Yeah, he was best editor in 1982 for that. And he was inducted to the Eisner Hall of Fame in 2008. So he also wrote one of the issues of The Adventures of Jerry Lewis, which is another fun comic book that nobody hears about anymore.
I remember seeing him once in a while. I just listened to a Earth 2 podcast where they did one where they did a Jerry Lewis. And it was a lot of fun.
It started off as Jerry Lewis and
Dean Martin.
Yes. And Jerry Lewis's estate won't allow them to reprint the issues, which I think is too bad. They would not allow them the last time they wanted to actually reprint them. They wouldn't allow them to do that. We also did a bunch of he did a lot of everything. I mean, he did Witching Hour, House of Secrets, House of Mystery. There's nothing that man couldn't do.
Oh no! I mean, I pulled up his bibliography, and it was insane. He worked for Defiant.
Yep.
In the 90s.
He wrote Airboy, which is a Eclipse comic, which is now defunct, and I believe you can get Airboy on Comixology Unlimited. He wrote for Image also. He did Conan. Yep.
Did he do? I forgot he did Conan.
We also don't talk about that. He also did some Fantastic Four.
Oh, he did some great Fantastic Four. He was kind of like, basically it was his book from what, 184 to, he did these weird short runs. He never did anything more than it looks like a year.
No, actually he only did a few. She did 40, 50, 154, 156, 182, 184 through 188, and 191 through 194. And that was it. But I remember the Fantastic Four because I believe the 191, 194, that's when the Fantastic Four broke up. Officially broke up, they resigned, and there was no Fantastic Four for a full year. And that's when Marv Wolfman and George Perez came on and brought it up to issue 200. He wrote, oh, that's right, I did remember this. He wrote, well, because I don't know why I've gotten into it, but I've been reading Werewolf by Night. He wrote three issues of Werewolf by Night that I actually enjoyed.
I mean, he did, I mean, he worked in television. I'm looking at the number of cartoons he worked on. His
Defenders run, again, 12 through 19. Didn't run, didn't do, but I remember his Defenders run also.
Well, it's just that he did he was filling a gap between, he's one of the people filling a gap between Engelhard and Gerber.
But if people have not, especially the newer fans, they have not heard of Len Wein, you need to Google the man, go on to Wikipedia, go to Marvel Comics Wiki, DC Comics, find the stuff by Len Wein. He has got some great iconic runs. He's a figure that really, you're right, he deserves much more attention, much more of the spotlight. And he did some great iconic stuff. Especially, I mean,
his Swamp Thing is on par with Alan Moore's.
Exactly. Yeah, that Swamp Thing. He what the first, how many issues did he write?
13. First 13 issues.
He
did a miniseries in 2016, and then the winter special, which was released after he died.
But he also did the Batman Hulk crossover.
Well, oh, he did that one? Okay.
He did that one too. I was just looking at this, and he's one of those, like, just one of them, like a Bill Mantlo almost, who could just write about anything and just do anything and do it of a high quality. You can read a Len Wein, and he never just phoned it in. He wrote great scripts throughout his whole career. And he doesn't, because there are so many creators, he just doesn't get the spotlight he deserves. He was a great creator, especially during the Bronze Age. A lot of Marvel and DC came from stuff like that he wrote. Swamp Thing, Wolverine, New X-Men.
Yeah. I mean, I went back, and last night was, I was getting ready to read, I was going to read the Engelhard issues that we were covering for your podcast. And I pulled out, and I went through to look at what was in the Justice League between 100 and 114. It's the 3-part 7 Soldiers of Victory JLA JSA crossover.
Yes.
Hold on a second. I put these in a note. There we go. So 7 Soldiers of Victory, 103, the Phantom Stranger Rutland, Vermont story. There was 3 issues, 2 in Marvel and 1 in DC, where it was kind of an unofficial crossover.
Yes.
An issue of Thor.
A small plug. My podcast, we recently covered we've been covering all of 1972 with a blogger, Attack of the 50-Year-Old Comic Book. And we go into great detail, that whole, Len Wein, JLA, all that stuff. Yes, we talk about it to a great extent. Yeah, it was the first unofficial DC Marvel crossover where different characters and different things, even the writers and creators themselves, appeared in the various issues.
Yeah, again, I mean, but he also had the 105 elongated man joins.
Right.
A great Red Tornado centric story.
He brought the Phantom Stranger. Phantom Stranger came in along his run also, right?
Yeah. He was in that was in 103 in the Rutland, Vermont. And then 107, 108 is the introduction of the Freedom Fighters. He writes Hawkman out of the book in 109. 110 is the Jon Stewart Christmas story where Hal slips on a bar of soap and knocks himself unconscious, and the Ring doesn't get him a doctor. The Ring goes and gets Jon Stewart so they can go on the Christmas adventure while Hal is laying unconscious with a concussion in his own bathtub.
I have not read that comic book in years. I'm gonna have to.
Okay, but I read it when I reread it a couple weeks ago. I went, "What the hell, man? That's kind of bad." You know, he could be dead. And then there's issue 111 and 112, which introduces a character, Libra, and the Injustice Gang, which is a real big part in Grant Morris. It's a great,
Right.
yeah, Grant Morris's Final Crisis. He's the big bad in that. And then
Yes.
113, which I've got sitting right next to me, which is what 7 of these were 100-page giants, where you got a Justice League story, and then 2 others, either a Seven Soldier Victory or Justice Society story, and then an old Justice League story for 100 pages, and they were 60 cents.
That was a bargain back then.
Oh God, yeah. And I've got most of those. And then this one is one of my favorite Justice Society crossover. It's a return of Sandy, the Golden Boy, and he's a sand creature. And then Jeff Johns uses this when he brings Sandy back as sand.
Yes.
And
you're right.
Snapper Carr returns in 114.
Poor Snapper Carr. He never got a good. Nothing ever good came out of Snapper Carr after he got out of the Justice League.
Yeah, Marty Pasco's the one that wrote him out, and then every time they try to bring him back, it is just ugly. It's always a car wreck, and you're like going, guys, if you don't want to write, if you think Snapper's a joke, don't write him. He's just a joke, because they try to make him funny, and it's just really painful.
Yeah, it's not a good. Yeah, they just don't do very good. Let's see what else did he do? Anything else fun?
He did. I think he did a couple Disney stuff.
It's funny. I was looking through, and I'm going, did he not? Is there somebody that's really mainstream that he didn't do? I'm like, no, he did. He did a big run on Spider-Man, 151 through 180. I didn't know that's a good run for him.
That's a good run for anybody.
And that was my favorite Green Lantern story when they brought back the Green Lantern right around 175, 176.
Well, his Incredible Hulk was 179 to 220.
That's another big run. Yes.
Yeah. So, and his Hulk's good.
Yeah.
His Hulk's good. It's him and Herb Trimp.
He did an okay run on Thor too. He did 242 through 271 and missed one issue. So
wow.
And I hadn't even thought about that until I was like going through the wiki. I'm going, wow, I didn't realize he wrote this and he wrote that. Now I really want to go back and reread some of these old, what did he do in Thor again? What did he do in, he wrote a short arc in Iron Man. What did he do in the Incredible Hulk? I want to go back and reread these. So
see, I don't think I've read his. Hulk was something my brother would have, and if I saw it sitting on the coffee table after he bought a bunch of comics, I'd read it. But I didn't read it religiously. Except when Bill Mantlo and Sal Buscema were doing it, I read it religiously.
Bill Mantlow's another unsung hero.
He's one of the greats.
Marvel Unlimited has almost all these runs for all these great Marvel comics, all the Iron Man, all the Fantastic Four, all the Thor. And it's a great place to go back and reread some of these classics, like the ones we were mentioning about Len Wein.
Oh yeah, I went back and thumbed through some of this stuff just to see it, and I bought a great comic, and I recommend it. X-Men Legends. Roy Thomas wrote the first issue, and it picks up at the end of 180 Hulk 181.
Yes, I remember seeing that just the other day. And Roy hasn't written a comic book in many years, if I'm not mistaken.
Good. It was so much fun. It was awesome. I loved it. And had very few ads in it. It was only $3.99, but it's basically Wolverine and a guy named Jacko Diamonds go on a mission for the Canadian government, and then they teleport into this base in America. And the cliffhanger is this mix of mutants like Havoc, Unis the Untouchable, all this. It was just great. It was a good Roy comic. It was a great Roy Thomas comic. And it was
love to see more Roy Thomas. He does not write any. I mean, he's close to 80 now, but he doesn't write anymore like he used to. No.
I think I'm going to go to Hero. He's always at Heroes Con in Carolina. My wife's from North Carolina, so I'm thinking maybe next summer I go, hey, you want to drive to Charlotte for a comic? She'll go. She likes that stuff. She likes seeing the cosplayers and go to the paint. She likes some of the panels. So, but I'd like to go and meet Roy and get him to sign something just to say I have it.
That would be good. I'm not too far from that either. That's actually a good idea.
Yeah, because I hear nothing but good things about HeroCon. We get GalaxyCon here, and it's all right.
I'm in the middle of the boondocks, so we don't get anything. I've got to travel a good couple hours before I get to anything that remotely sounds good.
Yeah.
So
well, I think that's good. We jumped around a bit, but Len is, you have to go and look. You got to go Google him, and you will find. Think of a character you like from like the 70s and 80s, and you'll probably find something he's written.
And even though it's a 70s comic or a Bronze Age comic, those are some great issues. If you read them in the context of the times, they are some great reads. They are iconic reads. And you're right, they should be read more often. And
I think anybody, if you like the Ted Kord Blue Beetle, his run on that, he did all 24 issues of it.
I love Ted Kord Blue Beetle. That to me is the iconic Blue Beetle. That is Blue Beetle to me.
Yeah, I like the Jamie Jaime Reyes version too. I did like that, but I like having more than one Blue Beetle. It's kind of something they did in DC where you would have generational characters. But the one in the late 80s after Crisis,
yes,
and Legends is great. It is so good, and he had a good. Was it? Oh God, I forget who the artist was.
I don't remember.
Paris Cullins.
Yes, it was.
Paris Cullins. It's a lot of fun. He lives here in. No, it's I think one of the creators from that era lives here in Richmond. It does all the cons around here. So,
well, thank you for having me on today. This was great. I love talking about these old creators that nobody talks about anymore.
Yeah. It's like he's one of these guys that even I mean, he was writing when I was a kid, and I never realized until years later who the hell he was and how important he was.
Same here. I'm the same way. I'm like, oh, wow, he did that. He did that. He did this. And yeah, I wish I could appreciate it more when I was in my teens and early 20s.
I think he's as good a writer as some of the ones that we talk about, like Englehart or Denny O'Neil or
Claremont.
Claremont. I mean, Jerry Conway. Jerry Conway was like, I'm starting to realize that he was kind of a patch guy. He was the guy that you put into chunks when they weren't a regular writer.
Yes.
He's got to be the good editor because he's been the script editor on Law and Order for a quarter of a century.
Yes, and he was the last regular scripter of Justice League of America. He had a huge run. He picked up after Englehart and went all the way through the end of the Bronze Age to the last.
Did he? Oh yeah, yes. He did, because he did the Detroit era too.
Yeah, he did the Detroit era. Yes,
I think that's his best.
Yeah, the Detroit era grows on you after time.
It's actually better. It's better than it's much better one because I was at a time where I was in and out of comics when that was coming out, and this is silly. And then Justice League International came out, and that was just such genius.
Yes.
But I've gone back and read it, and it's a great comic, and it's got solid Chuck Paxton art.
So, yeah, I agree.
All right, what do you got to pimp? What do you tell us about everybody about your show?
My show is a Fantastic Comic Fan podcast. I put up several episodes a week. You never know what's going to be on. It's a short form podcast. It's usually about 20 minutes or so. I will give a link that Ross can put into the show notes. It's actually from Linktree. Shows my Instagram, Twitter, all that fun stuff, where you can listen to it on different platforms. Do check it out. It's a very eclectic, eccentric podcast that I'll cover everything from the golden age to the present. I also cover a lot of Kickstarters and indie comics that are out there right now. So thanks again, Ross, for having me on here.
Oh, it's always fun to have you on. Think of another creator because I want to do more creator stuff. But
me too.
It's just finding the time with other shows.
One more time, people should go to my feed because we've actually started this on my feed where we've done Roy Thomas, Marie Severin, Jim Shooter. We got one going on, and we always have covered other stuff. But yeah, again, Ross, thanks so much for having me on. I appreciate it.
You're always welcome. Well, folks, that's it. I don't know when this is going up, so I'm not going to plug anything really immediate, but just, every Tuesday is Legion. Every Thursday is The Offenders. And then most Saturdays, unless I've just killed myself at work, is something extra. I know it's when you hear this, I've done this issue on the Marvels project, which I'm going to record later today and put up. Folks, remember, be smart, be safe, be kind, and read some comics.